Hello and welcome to another video. Today is Thursday, which means it's another day for studies. Today's study is just going to go ahead and be a study for hands. I'm going to go ahead and be honest with you guys. I think the hands really came out bad this week. They came out like shit, but that's okay because this is just a study session. This is a gesture drawing session that I did on that website Line of Action. If you guys are ever interested in doing gesture drawings, I would recommend that website because they have lots of different models and they have it set up that it will time you and you could do different class structures and stuff if that's what you want to do. I just say it's a really good website. Whenever I want to do gesture drawing or quick drawings, that's the website that I use. And basically, I just set it up so that way I would just be drawing hands today, just because I felt like I needed that practice and I didn't know what else to study this week. I was like, do I want to do shoes again? And I was like, no, I don't want to do shoes. I did shoes last week. And so I was going to mix it up and I was going to do hands. And everybody needs hand practice, especially me, okay? I draw hands in like the same 2 or 3 positions and then I don't even finish drawing hands. Can't even remember the last time I finished drawing a hand, if I'm being honest. So it's just a little bit of hand drawings today. I'm going to be honest also. I'm not really going to talk about the drawings of the hands too much just because they're just hands. I already told you I don't like the way that they came out. So we're actually going to be talking a little bit about Kung Fu Panda 4, which I know sounds like super random. I saw the movie last week and I ended up having a lot of thoughts about it just because whenever I go to the movies, I always have a lot of thoughts about movies. I haven't really talked about that on my channel as of yet just because I'm like, it's not really relevant to art. I mean, I like to draw and stuff. And so I thought about drawing the Kung Fu Panda characters while I talked about them, but I was like, I don't know how to draw animals, so I'm not even going to bother. So we're just going to draw hands and talk about my thoughts on Kung Fu Panda for like 20 minutes. So this video is going to have spoilers for Kung Fu Panda 4. So if you are looking forward to watching Kung Fu Panda 4, I would maybe wait until after you watch it to watch this video. And just so you guys know, I am not planning for this channel to become like a movie commentary video. This is just probably a one-off. I did want to make a video about Wish a while ago, but I'm not going to do that. So there's not really going to be any movie commentary on this channel. It's just a one-off because I had a lot of thoughts about it and nobody to share them with. So getting into the movie a little bit, it's not that I thought it was a bad movie. It's just more that I thought that it was kind of generic and predictable and like lacked emotional depth that the previous 3 kind of had, which makes it sound like I think the movie is bad, but that's not true because it doesn't really feel like a Kung Fu Panda movie, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It kind of just feels like I don't know, something more generic that you would see in like any other animated film. So like the movie is about Poe having to give up being the dragon warrior so that he could become the spiritual leader of the valley. And so as soon as that happens and then you meet the little fox, I don't remember her name. I feel like they don't ever introduce her. They just start calling her by her name and I'm like, I don't even know when she said her name. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I just missed that. But yeah, and then as soon as you meet the fox, you're like, well, okay, she's gonna be the next dragon warrior, right? Because obviously, but she's like a thief, so you're like, okay, so she's gonna betray Poe, especially when she says that she was taken in as a child by like a benefactor of the city that they're going to, and you're like, okay, so she works for the bad guy, and then yeah, she works for the bad guy, and I'm like, this is like beat for beat, like really predictable, and so that's an issue that I have with the movie. There's also the fact that they teased Tai Lung in the trailer, and Tai Lung is only in it for like 2, 3 scenes, right? And then he just gets his ass kicked, and it's so I like Tai Lung, but I was like a super fan of Tai Lung, but I know a lot of other people were super fans of Tai Lung. And so when they brought him back only for like a couple of like 2 or 3 lines, I'm sure people are actually gonna be really mad about that because it was actually like a really big piece of the marketing. And also there's the fact that the Furious Five did not appear in this movie. They say that the Furious Five appear in this movie, and that is technically true. They appear in like a sort of cameo at the end, but they don't speak. And so, that's I feel like also part of the issue with the movie was that they had like not as much budget as they usually do, or like they were just really tight on the budget because there was the Furious Five didn't return and it's all like celebrity voice actors, and then there were other celebrity voice actors that were in it, like Tai Lung, he only had a few lines, and then like Shifu was in the movie, but he didn't really have that much of a role in the movie too much. He was just like berating Poe about not being the spiritual leader of the valley and willing to give up the Dragon Warrior title. And so he was not in the movie very much, even though, like I said, Tai Lung did show back up again. And Shifu didn't even see him at all, even though he's his dad. And I don't know, it just felt strange to me, especially because he was like, Poe knew that Tai Lung had appeared back in the valley, right? And then but he didn't mention that to Shifu, I guess. I guess because the girl was like, or did he implying that it was not Tai Lung, that it was the chameleon? Like, they knew it was the chameleon already, but I don't know. I just felt like, I don't know. if you're gonna bring him back, he should at least interact with Shifu because in the movie, Tai Lung seems like he chilled out a lot while he was in the spirit realm. But I don't know. I guess they didn't want to put too much emphasis on him in the movie. And then there was this part where the little fox girl, I think her name is Shen, right? So she needs to gain the trust of Po so that she could get his staff. And so I didn't feel like it made sense for her to introduce herself to Po, right? By getting arrested because she tries to break into the Jade Palace and steal things. So I was like, is that part of the plan? Or did she just like get distracted and decide to steal things? Because it was part of the plan for her to get close to Po so that she could get the staff and give it to the chameleon, right? But then why introduce yourself as someone untrustworthy? So that way you had to build trust to get the staff. Like, it didn't really make sense to me. Why wouldn't you try to deceive him first? And like the implication is that she deceived him by becoming his friend. It's like, okay, but why introduce him? Why introduce yourself as someone who was untrustworthy in the first place? That part didn't really make sense to me either. And then there was the point of the chameleon, which was that I felt was kind of underutilized, which was that she could be anyone, be anywhere. And they only used that like one or two times in the movie. Like, she was transforming a lot, but it wasn't really for deception, it was more for power, right? So she could take on other people's kung fu and stuff. And so I was like, they could have done more with that part. And I felt like there was plot threads that were added, but they were not really addressed too much. Like the reason that Poe doesn't want to give up being the Dragon Warrior. He said this because he loves it. But at the beginning of the movie, you see that he kind of has a big head. He's like signing autographs and stuff, but that doesn't really go anywhere or act as like a character flaw for Poe, really. It's just more that he's not ready to move on from being the Dragon Warrior. So it's like, why introduce that whole big head celebrity type thing if you weren't going to do anything about it? Like, he gets like his ego hurt a little bit when he goes to the city and finds out that nobody knows about him. But like I said, it's not really a plot point. It's more like a bit for comedy reasons. And I guess bits are fine, but I felt like that could have been like a plot thread that could help have more emotional weight. Because like I said, the movie doesn't really have too much emotional depth to it. Like in the first one, it's about Poe's journey learning to become the Dragon Warrior, and then there's a lot of hurt on Tai Lung and Shifu's part because it's like their father and son relationship was ruined because of the Dragon Warrior, and then Poe comes in and takes the title of Dragon Warrior, and nobody thinks that he's worthy. And there's a lot of emotional depth there. And then the second one, it's literally about the guy who killed Poe's parents. At this point, that we think that both his parents are dead. It's the guy who killed Poe's parents and wiped out all pandas. And so that's a lot of emotional depth there, right? And then in the third one, it's the return of Poe's dad and the rest of the pandas, and then Poe actually learns where he came from, right? And so there's a lot of emotional depth there, and I just felt like this movie really lacked that. There was not really any connection to the villain in this one for Poe. Like the little fox Shen, she was connected to the chameleon because, like I said, she was raised by the chameleon after a certain point. But it doesn't really feel like an emotional connection because the chameleon states that they are not like emotional with each other. They're both using each other to as a means to an end, right? So there's not really anything emotional about this. Like I said, Shifu doesn't really act as like any kind of emotional thing, even though Tai Lung is back allegedly, and then Poe's dads are in the movie, and I thought their bits were really fun. But it also felt like he was kind of detracting from the main plot. Like, I liked seeing them do things, but also I was kind of like, okay, but can we get back to like the actual story? So I also kind of felt like the villain's motivation was kind of weak. Like the chameleon's whole purpose for deciding that she was going to steal everyone's kung fu is because she was not allowed to learn kung fu because she was too small, which is kind of weird because, you know, Mantis learned kung fu and he was really small, and Viper learned kung fu and she's not exactly big either. So I'm pretty sure the chameleon is much larger than Viper. So I don't know. It just felt kind of like hollow, kind of. And then even if it was that you wanted just to learn kung fu, why are you then deciding to take over the entire planet? Like, make that make sense. You don't have to take over the entire planet to learn kung fu. And then there was this thing that Shifu was really trying to dig into Poe, like teach Poe this lesson that you don't always have to solve problems with violence. Like, that was like a really Dragon Warrior way of thinking, was solving things with violence. But if he was going to be the spiritual leader of the valley, he needed to learn how to solve things without violence. And I feel like he didn't really do that in the movie. Like, he tried to do that with the chameleon, but it didn't work. And so Shifu was like, now you can go fight her. And I'm like, no, I don't think that works, right? Especially not for the lesson you're trying to teach him, where, I mean, it was an imaginary Shifu, right? But still, it doesn't really work. If you're like, you need to solve things without violence and more in a spiritual way, it's not really working. I guess they did convince the thieves to help them without fighting, but still, I feel like for the climax of the movie, the whole spiritual leader lesson should have clicked in for Poe, because that's kind of like the whole point of his arc in this movie, which I felt like was supposed to be the arc of his movie, was him learning to be a spiritual leader. It kind of felt like more like he was learning more to be a teacher to Shen, but he was supposed to learn how to be a teacher in the third one, and he did that. He learned how to teach the other pandas. So it's like it didn't really work this time. And so I worked on a little bit of like a rewrite for this. I am not a Hollywood movie writer, and I don't think that I'm better than Hollywood movie writers. It's just some ideas that I felt that I had that would maybe make the movie just a little bit stronger. So take this with a grain of salt. I don't write fan fiction anymore. I used to when I was a kid, but I don't write it anymore. And so I was like dipping my toe back into fan fiction after like 10 years. So yeah, please be nice to me. This is just some ideas that I felt like would fit a little bit more of the story. So the first scene in the movie is in the real movie is Tai Lung showing up and destroying things and being like, I'm Tai Lung and I'm taking back this part of the whatever, wherever they live, and then I'm gonna take over the whole world, and then they do that. I'm still not sure why they did that. I think she needed the iron for something. Yeah, she needed the iron, so that's why she destroyed the iron quarry. But I would change that instead to where Tai Lung is already coming out of the portal. Listen, I know the whole point of the movie was that they needed Poe's staff to open the portal, but she's like a sorceress, so I felt like maybe she could figure a way out to get to the spirit realm without having to do that. So I know I'm like already changing things part of the movie, but and maybe making it weaker. I don't know, but we'll see, right? So she already figures out a way to open the spirit world, the chameleon, and she brings Tai Lung out, and she's like, "Hey, Tai Lung, do you want revenge against Poe?" Right? And he's like, "I've chilled out in the spirit realm, so not really." But then he sees like the cages, and he's like, "Oh damn, she already asked other people, and the people that turned around are getting like put in cages, right?" And so she's like, "Well, if you're not gonna join me, I'm just gonna take your kung fu." So she tries to take his kung fu, and then he runs off and he escapes, right? And she's like, "Ah, damn, he escaped." And he's like, "Ah, damn, I escaped. That was scary." But he's like, "Well, now I need to figure out a way to get to the spirit realm." And also, I have to warn people about this because he's like I said, he's kind of chilled out in the spirit realm. So he's like, "I guess I gotta go find Poe, even though I hate that guy." And so he goes to find Poe because he knows that his staff could help, send him back to the spirit realm for one, and also he probably wants to know about some villain who's coming after him, right? And so that's like I would change the opening scene too, just because I feel like if you're gonna bring back a villain, bring back the villain. So Thailand is gonna be in the rest of the movie in this free write thing. So the next part of the movie can play out pretty much the same, where Poe is going to be doing the opening for his dad's new noodle shop, and the part where he's fighting off the stingrays, the dragon warrior, and all the parts where Shifu's like, you gotta stop being the dragon warrior and look for a new dragon warrior. All that stuff is fine because I'm not really setting up that setup for changing that setup for the movie. It's fine. He's gonna stop being the dragon warrior in this one too, just because I guess, even though it doesn't feel like he's been dragon warrior for very long. But and also, I thought the whole point of the Dragon Warrior was that they were preordained or something, and they had to be like picked as the Dragon Warrior. Not by I guess Ugle was the spiritual leader, and he picked the Dragon Warrior. But does that imply that Ugle was the Dragon Warrior before Poe? Because if so, Ugle was the Dragon Warrior for a long ass time. That guy was like hundreds of years old. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. Anyway, so that part, all those parts can play out the same. But the part where Poe sees someone going into the Jade Palace, that's where the next changes are going to start happening in the story. So, next part is when Poe goes and sees that someone has broken into the Jade Palace, he sees Shen, the little fox, but instead of breaking into the Jade Palace because she wants to steal things, she's breaking into the Jade Palace because she's admiring all this stuff because she is a lover of Kung Fu. And then she sees Poe and she freaks out. She's like, "Oh my god, it's the Dragon Warrior, the Dragon Warrior." And that feeds into the whole point of Poe's ego. So Poe's ego is going to play a little bit more of a part in this movie. So she's really excited. She's like, "Oh my god, it's Poe. It's so cool. You're the Dragon Warrior." And he's like, "Yeah, I'm the Dragon Warrior. You shouldn't break into the Jade Palace, but it's really cool. You think I'm cool." She's like, "Yeah, I really love Kung Fu, but I was never able to learn Kung Fu, right?" And so if you're figuring it out, this is obviously the chameleon in disguise as like a little fox. And so you might be thinking, well, in the movie, the chameleon, whenever she turns into someone, they get like these scales. And so to like depict that is the chameleon, right? But then I'm like, well, I just don't do that, and then it'll be easier to trick people, right? So or maybe it's just depicted as that for us, the audience. So this could go either way. Either we, the audience, could tell that she is the chameleon and that she's gonna be like sitting there, or you could just change the way that she's animated so that even the audience doesn't know. I feel like it would be stronger if even we, the audience, didn't know that she was the chameleon. So let's just pretend that she looks like Shen does, right? So then while they're talking about how great Po is, Tai Lung shows up, and Tai Lung does not know that that is the chameleon because he didn't see her do her shape-shifting thing, so he doesn't know that that's her. And so he's like, hey, yo, Po, someone's coming to take over the valley, and also they brought me back from the spirit world, and also they're taking people's kung fu. And Po's like, why should I believe you? And he's like, why would I come all, and Tai Lung's like, why should I come all the way here just to lie to you? And also, I was hanging out in this spirit room and it was cool, like, I want to go back, like, this place sucks. And so the little fox is like, no, don't trust him because he was evil before and now he's trying to trick you. And obviously it's because she's trying to trick him because she's the chameleon. But the audience doesn't know that yet. But we know, I know, you and me, because I'm telling the story now. Right? So, but then Poe's like, well, I guess I should believe him because he's right. Why would he lie about that? So they go off together to, what's it called? To go stop the chameleon. And they leave like a letter for Shifu and their dads, right? Because Shifu, he thought about talking to Shifu, but Tai Lung was like, ew, don't bring Shifu in this. And also he was like, oh, Po was like, maybe I shouldn't bring Shifu into this because it's Tai Lung related. So they leave a note, but he does mention Tai Lung in the note, and then he leaves a note for his dads because he has to leave, right? And so that actually adds into like the third plot, or the B plot, I guess, where Po and Po's two dads went to go save him in the original movie. And I was like, well, what if Shifu joined them on that little part of the journey? I thought that would be fun because it's like two incompetent people with one hyper competent person, and Shifu would be annoyed the whole time, so that would be really good for comedy bits. And also Shifu would want to see his son even though he was evil before, right? And he's like, well, it says that Tai Lung is helping out Po. And so he's like, I gotta see this, right? So that would give Shifu more to do in the movie because he was not in the movie for some reason. And then so Po and Tai Lung go off, but it turns out that the little fox snuck in with them so that the way she could go on the adventure with them. And Po's like, yeah, you can come on the adventure, I guess, because you're such a big fan of me. And Tai Lung's like, ugh, whatever. So they go on an adventure and they get into wacky shenanigans, and it seems like they keep butting heads, but they're also manufactured things by the fox so that way they would not get along, because she's like, well, I gotta kind of fix this so that way they don't kick my ass when they get there, because like these are like some of the only people that could stop me in my plan or whatever. So they keep going along. The fox sets up some backstory when they're like hanging out together, where she's like, oh, it's just kind of sad, I'm actually an orphan because my parents were taken down or killed by this guy, and I don't know who he is, but she could be like, I know who he is, and I just don't know how to get to him. He's like really powerful. Like Poe's like, well, I'll help you get to him, because he like, it's not cool that he messed up your family. And she's like, yeah, it's really not cool that he messed up my family. And so it turns out later that Po is actually the one who messed up her family. I don't know if it's because like it was like an accident that he was too careless as a dragon warrior, or if her parents were criminals that were taken out by the dragon warrior. Either way, it's just like give Po. So when it turns out that she's evil, then it just makes Po be like, wow, maybe I didn't always do the right thing as the dragon warrior, and so maybe I'm not actually deserving of being the dragon warrior. And that would be at like the low point of the movie, where the hero has to climb back up again. And then it would be revealed that the reason why the Furious Five were not in the movie was because they were taken captive by the chameleon. I feel like that would be a really great reason to explain why they weren't there. There was a reason that they were given reason why they weren't there, but I felt like if it turned out that, oh, actually, while they were on those adventures, they were also kidnapped by the chameleon, that would have made so much sense, and then they would have actually been in the movie. Anyway, I'm getting heated about it anyway. So then Tai Lung is like, wow, you really suck, Po. You got us caught. And Po's like, dang, that's really fucked up, Tai Lung. But maybe you're right. Maybe I shouldn't have been the dragon warrior. And then the dads show up and they help them, and Shifu sees Tai Lung again. It's like a whole thing. And then they take down the chameleon, but she's like, all I wanted was to learn kung fu, and I actually really did admire you before you took out my parents. And then it would be like Po would have to be like, oh, I'm not gonna fight you. This is after like a fight has already happened. This would happen. And then Po would be like, I'm not gonna fight you. I feel like you have a lot of potential. I'm really sorry about what happened with your parents, but I feel like you're not evil. You never really did anything that was really too evil. So just go ahead and be nice. And then she would be nice after that. She'd be like, I'm really sorry for what I did. I was wrong. And they'd be like, yeah. And I think you would be a really good dragon warrior with your sorcery and stuff. And we could teach you kung fu. And then it would be a happy ending. And I feel like it would make more sense for the characters a little bit. I know this is really rushed at towards the end here, but I don't know. I just felt like maybe that would be a little bit better. You guys can tell me if that sucked ass or whatever, but this is the end of the video. I'm just going to go ahead and thank you guys for spending this time with me on this long ass rant about Kung Fu Panda 2 that nobody asked for. I'll go ahead and see you in the next one. Bye bye.